The silver ship appeared without warning above Earth's blue skies. It was massive, stretching 5 kilometers from end to end, blocking out the sun over entire cities. Within hours, every screen on Earth displayed the same image: a tall, slender alien with pale purple skin and 4 elegant arms standing in what appeared to be a throne room of crystal and gold. "People of Earth," the alien spoke, and his words were translated into every human language simultaneously. "I am Ambassador Theron of the Valorian Empire. Your planet has been selected for integration into our glorious civilization. You should consider this a great honor." President Chen of the United Earth Government sat in the Emergency Command Center deep beneath Geneva, watching the broadcast with her military advisors. Her face remained calm, but her hands were clenched tight beneath the table. Ambassador Theron continued speaking, his voice smooth and confident. "We have brought order to 47 star systems. 236 species now live under the protection and guidance of the Valorian Empire. Your primitive world will benefit greatly from our technology, our culture, and our wisdom. You have 30 days to accept our terms. Surrender your weapons, dismantle your governments, and prepare for peaceful integration. If you refuse, we will be forced to pacify your planet. This process will be unpleasant for you." The broadcast ended. The massive ship remained in orbit, silent and threatening. Around the world, people panicked. Some prayed, some rioted, some prepared for the end. But in the command centers and military bases hidden across the solar system, humans prepared for something else entirely. General Marcus Stone stood before a holographic display showing the Valorian ship. He was a tall man with gray hair and scars on his weathered face. He had spent 40 years preparing for this moment. "They think we're primitives," he said quietly to President Chen. "They scanned our cities and our satellites. They saw what we wanted them to see." President Chen nodded. "How long have we been tracking them, General?" 63 years, Madam President. "We detected their expansion pattern in 2184, when our deep space telescopes caught the electromagnetic signature of their fleet, destroying a civilization in the Tau Ceti system. We've been watching them conquer their way through our galactic neighborhood ever since. We knew they would come for us eventually." The general pressed a button and the holographic display changed. It now showed the entire solar system. Red dots appeared throughout, hundreds of them, near Jupiter's moons, in the asteroid belt, beyond Neptune in the dark, cold Kuiper belt. Each red dot was a warship hidden and waiting. "The Mars colonies?" President Chen asked. "Not colonies anymore, ma'am. Mars is one giant weapons factory. We've been building ships and weapons for 4 decades. Every space station, every mining operation, every scientific outpost, they all had a secondary purpose. We unified Earth's government 60 years ago for exactly this reason. Every nation contributed. Every person on Earth paid taxes that funded the greatest military buildup in human history. And the Valorians have no idea. In orbit, the Valorian crew celebrated their easy victory. Commander Zelith, a veteran of 30 successful pacifications, stood on his ship's bridge and laughed with his officers. 30 days, he said, pouring drinks for his crew. "I wager they surrender in 20. These humans have barely left their own planet. They have no shields, no plasma weapons, no faster-than-light travel. They're children playing with rockets and satellites." His second officer, a younger Valorian named Kreth, studied the sensor data. "Commander, there are some unusual readings in the outer system. High concentrations of metal and energy signatures near asteroids and ice," Commander Zelith interrupted. "Mining operations, probably. These primitives dig rocks for resources. Nothing to concern us. I've seen 100 species like this. They all follow the same pattern: shock, denial, anger, and finally acceptance. In 30 days, Earth will be ours." But Kreth continued to feel uneasy. There was something about the human broadcast that bothered him. After delivering their ultimatum, the Valorians had intercepted Earth's communications. Most of it was panic and fear, as expected. But some of the military channels showed something else: calm, preparation, almost like they had been expecting this. Deep in the Kuiper belt, beyond Neptune's orbit where the sun was just another bright star, Fleet Admiral Sarah Okonkwo walked through the corridors of Fortress Station Omega. The station was carved into a massive asteroid, hidden from sensors by layers of ice and rock. Inside it was a city. 20,000 personnel lived and worked here, maintaining a fleet of warships that humanity had built in secret. "Status report," Admiral Okonkwo commanded as she entered the war room. "All ships are ready, ma'am," her tactical officer responded. We have 347 capital ships, 812 frigates, and over 5,000 unmanned combat drones. Every ship is armed and fueled. Crews are at battle stations. We're just waiting for the order." The Admiral looked at the holographic display showing Earth small and distant. She had lived out here for 20 years, rarely visiting her home planet. She had 2 daughters on Earth whom she hadn't seen in person for a decade. She had sacrificed everything to prepare for this day. "The Valorians think we're afraid," she said quietly. "They think we'll beg and plead and finally submit. They've conquered 200 species that way, but every species they conquered was peaceful. They explored space to seek knowledge and friendship. We explored space for a different reason." Her tactical officer, a scarred veteran named Liu, smiled grimly. "We explored space to prepare for war." "Exactly," Admiral Okonkwo replied. "Humans have been fighting wars for 10,000 years. We've fought with sticks and stones, with swords and arrows, with guns and bombs, with nuclear weapons that could destroy our whole planet. We nearly wiped ourselves out a dozen times, and every time we survived. We learned. We got better at killing. It's what we do best." Back on Earth, the 30 days passed slowly. The Valorian ship remained in orbit, occasionally sending down more broadcasts reminding humanity of the approaching deadline. Some human governments sent pleading messages, begging for more time. These were real messages, from leaders who didn't know about the hidden fleets. Even among Earth's governments, the secret was kept from many. Only the highest levels of leadership knew the truth. On day 29, President Chen addressed the people of Earth. Her speech was broadcast worldwide. "My fellow humans," she began. "Tomorrow the Valorians expect our answer. They expect us to surrender. They expect us to give up our freedom, our independence, and our future. They have told us that resistance is futile, that we are primitive, that we should be grateful for their domination." She paused and her expression hardened. "Our answer is no. Not now, not ever. Humanity bows to no one." In orbit, Commander Zaleth received the transmission and laughed. Brave words from a doomed species. "Prepare the bombardment weapons. Tomorrow we will demonstrate the price of defiance. We'll destroy one of their cities, perhaps this New York or Tokyo, and they will reconsider. They always do." But on day 30, when the deadline expired and the Valorian ship powered up its weapons, something happened that Commander Zaleth had never experienced in his long military career. The stars began to move. Except they weren't stars. They were human warships, hundreds of them, emerging from the darkness beyond Neptune, their engines burning bright as they accelerated toward Earth. The Valorian sensors screamed warnings. More ships appeared from behind Jupiter, from the asteroid belt. From Mars, Commander Zaleth stared at his display in disbelief. That's impossible. They're primitives. Where did these ships come from?" His sensor operator's voice shook. "Commander, I'm counting over 2,000 vessels. And they're all armed. They're all heading toward us." For the first time in his career, Commander Zaleth felt something he had never felt during a pacification mission. He felt fear. Commander Zaleth had 3 seconds to make a decision. His massive dreadnought, the pride of Valoria, had shields that could withstand the weapons of any known species. His crew was trained and experienced. He had fought in 23 battles and won them all. But he had never seen anything like this. "Raise shields," he shouted. "Power all weapons. Send a distress signal to the nearest Imperial fleet." The bridge crew moved quickly, their forearms working across holographic controls. The ship's shields activated, creating a shimmering purple barrier around the massive vessel. Weapon ports opened along the hull and plasma cannons charged with deadly energy. "How long until reinforcements arrive?" Zaleth demanded. His communications officer looked up with worried eyes. 16 days, Commander. The nearest Imperial fleet is 16 days away, even at maximum faster than light speed. 16 days. Zaleth felt his confidence waver. The human ships were still approaching, and there were so many of them. Too many. His single dreadnought, powerful as it was, suddenly seemed very alone. "Target the largest human vessels," he ordered. "Fire when they enter range. Show them the power of the Empire." But before his weapons could fire, the human fleet did something unexpected. They didn't slow down. They didn't try to communicate. They didn't posture or threaten. They simply attacked. The first wave came from the human frigates, small ships barely 1/10 the size of the Valorian dreadnought. They launched thousands of missiles, primitive chemical rockets that shouldn't have posed any threat to Imperial shields. Commander Zaleth almost smiled. This was going to be easier than he thought. Then the missiles hit. The first few missiles struck the shields and exploded harmlessly, as expected. But there were too many. Hundreds hit within seconds, then thousands. The shield generators began to overheat, struggling to dissipate the kinetic energy of so many impacts. Warning lights flashed across the bridge. Shields holding at 70%, his tactical officer reported. No, wait, 60%. They're launching more missiles. How many missiles do these primitives have? Zalith shouted. The answer came in the form of a second wave, larger than the first. These weren't just missiles. These were unmanned drones, small craft piloted by computers and packed with explosives. They moved in coordinated swarms, too many to track, too many to shoot down. They slammed into the Valorian shields like a metallic rain. Aboard the human flagship Retribution, Admiral Okonkwo watched the battle unfold on her holographic display. The Valorian ship's shields were strong, she had to admit. Stronger than the simulations had predicted. But humans had spent 60 years studying Valorian technology from a distance. They had watched the Empire fight dozens of battles. They had analyzed every weakness. Phase 2, she commanded calmly. Deploy the railgun frigates. 20 human ships broke formation and accelerated to flanking positions. These frigates were different from the others. They were built around a single weapon, a magnetic railgun that could accelerate a solid metal slug to 1/10 the speed of light. The energy required was enormous. Each ship could only fire 3 shots before its reactors needed to cool down. But each shot carried the kinetic energy of a nuclear bomb. The railguns fired. The tungsten slugs crossed the distance in less than a second. They didn't explode. They didn't need to. At relativistic speeds, mass itself became the weapon. The first slug hit the Valorian shields and the entire ship shuddered. Energy cascaded across the shield barrier in visible purple waves. The second slug hit from a different angle. The third, the fourth. On the Valorian bridge, alarms screamed. Shields at 40%. 30%. Shield generators 3 and 7 are offline. Commander Zalith finally understood what he was facing. These humans didn't fight like other species. Every species the Valorians had conquered used energy weapons. Plasma, lasers, particle beams. All of these could be stopped by shields designed to dissipate energy. But the humans used kinetic weapons. Simple physics. Mass times velocity equals force, and there was no good defense against a chunk of metal moving at a significant fraction of light speed. Return fire, Zalith ordered desperately. All weapons! The Valorian dreadnought finally unleashed its arsenal. Plasma cannons fired bolts of superheated matter toward the human fleet. Particle beams lanced out at near light speed. For a few glorious seconds, Zalith thought they might win. The human ships had no shields at all. Several frigates exploded as plasma bolts found their targets. Human ships died. Their crews vaporized in an instant. But the humans didn't retreat. They didn't even slow down. For every ship the Valorians destroyed, 10 more took its place. And Admiral Okonkwo had expected losses. She had planned for them. Every human ship had a volunteer crew who knew the risks. They had trained for years. They had families on Earth. They were willing to die. Continue the attack, Admiral Okonkwo ordered as casualty reports came in. Her voice was steady, but inside each loss hurt. All ships maintain formation. Capital ships move to firing position. Prepare the MAC rounds. The larger human warships now entered the battle. These were the capital ships, each one a kilometer long and bristling with weapons. They had been built in the secret shipyards of the Kuiper Belt, constructed over decades from asteroid metal, and powered by fusion. Reactors that Earth scientists had, perfected specifically for war. The capital ships fired. Their magnetic acceleration cannons, massive railguns that made the frigate weapons look like toys. The rounds they fired were the size of cars, traveling at even higher speeds. When they hit, the Valorian shield simply collapsed. Shields down. The Valorian tactical officer screamed. We're exposed! Commander Zalith watched in horror as the next salvo of human weapons struck his ship's hull directly. The Pride of Valoria was built from the strongest materials in the Valorian Empire. Its armor had withstood plasma fire from a dozen alien species. But nothing could withstand this. The kinetic rounds punched through the hull like paper. Explosions rippled across the dreadnought's surface. Sections of the ship vented atmosphere into space. Hundreds of Valorian crew members died in seconds. Evacuate the ship. Zalith finally ordered, his pride shattered. Launch all escape pods. Send a message to the Empire. Tell them Earth is not what we thought. Tell them the humans are dangerous. Tell them. His words were cut off as a final railgun round struck the Pride of Valoria's reactor core. The entire ship exploded in a brilliant flash of light visible from Earth's surface. 5,000 Valorian crew members died instantly. Only a handful of escape pods managed to launch before the explosion. On Earth, billions of humans watched the battle through telescopes and satellites. When the Valorian dreadnought exploded, the planet erupted in celebration. People danced in the streets. They hugged strangers. They cried with relief and joy. The alien threat that had loomed over them for 30 days was gone, destroyed in less than an hour of combat. But aboard the Retribution, Admiral Okonkwo did not celebrate. She studied the tactical data from the battle, analyzing every detail. Yes, they had won. But the cost troubled her. 43 human ships destroyed, over 2,000 crew members dead, and this was just one Valorian ship. Intelligence reports said the Empire had thousands of such vessels. Send a message to all ships, she commanded. Recover the Valorian escape pods. Take the survivors prisoner, but treat them well. We need to learn everything we can about their fleet movements, their technology, and their military doctrine. Her second-in-command, Captain Rodriguez, looked at her with concern. Admiral, we won a great victory today. Shouldn't we? This wasn't a victory, Captain. Admiral Okonkwo interrupted quietly. This was an opening move. We destroyed one ship. The Valorian Empire will send more, many more. And now they know we're not primitives. They'll come prepared next time. This war has just begun. She was right. Deep in Valorian space, 16 days away at faster than light speed, the news of the Pride of Valoria's destruction reached Imperial Command. The High Council of Valoria, a group of ancient warriors who had ruled the Empire for centuries, received the report with shock and disbelief. A single primitive planet destroyed a dreadnought. High Counselor Mevrin demanded. This is impossible. Zelith must have malfunctioned. There must be some mistake, but the data didn't lie. The escape pod survivors told the same story. The sensor logs from nearby Imperial monitoring stations confirmed it. Earth had a military fleet, a powerful one, and they had weapons the Empire had never encountered before. We underestimated them, High Counselor Thessa admitted, her forearms gesturing in frustration. We thought they were like all the others. Peaceful explorers, weak scientists, primitive merchants. But these humans are different. Then we will send more ships, Mevrin declared. Not one dreadnought, but 20. With escort carriers and support fleets, we will crush this human resistance and make an example of their planet. Let the galaxy see what happens to species who defy the Valorian Empire. Orders went out across Imperial space. Fleets began to gather. Thousands of ships prepared for war. The Empire had been insulted, embarrassed, and hurt. They would respond with overwhelming force. But the Valorians were about to learn something that would have saved them much suffering if they had known it earlier. Humanity had a saying, one that was thousands of years old and proven true in countless conflicts. If you want peace, prepare for the Valorian relief fleet arrived at Earth exactly 16 days later. It was the largest military force the Empire had assembled in 50 years, 20 dreadnoughts, each as powerful as the Pride of Valoria, 40 cruisers, over 100 support vessels, carrier ships filled with fighter craft. In total, more than 3,000 Valorian warriors prepared to punish humanity for their defiance. Fleet Commander Vashir stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Glory, and studied the blue planet ahead. He was old by Valorian standards. Having served the Empire for over a century, he had conquered 14 worlds. He had brought order to chaos and civilization to primitives. He expected Earth to be no different. Send them a message, he commanded. Tell the humans they have one final chance to surrender. If they refuse, we will bombard their planet until their cities are dust. But before his communications officer could send the message, the sensors detected something. Ships, hundreds of them, rising from Earth itself, from the Moon, from Mars. The human fleet had grown. In 16 days they had built more vessels, armed more weapons, and prepared more defenses. Admiral Okonkwo had not been idle. She had known the Valorians would return with greater force, so she had called in every ship, every weapon, and every soldier humanity had. The secret fleets from the Kuiper Belt had joined with new vessels from Mars. Orbital defense platforms surrounded Earth in a protective ring. Minefields had been seeded throughout the solar system's main approach routes, and humanity had one more advantage. They were fighting for their home. This is Admiral Sarah Okonkwo of the United Earth Defense Force, she broadcast to the Valorian fleet. "You have entered our solar system with hostile intent. Turn back now or we will destroy you." Commander Bashir actually laughed when he heard the message. "Destroy us with what? We have 164 capital ships. They are outnumbered 3-1. His tactical officer nodded but looked uncertain. "Commander, our intelligence from the first battle shows that human weapons are unusual. They use kinetic projectiles at extreme velocities. Our shields are not optimized for—" "Then we will destroy them before they can fire," Bashir interrupted. "Launch all fighters. Advance in battle formation. Target their largest vessels first. Show these humans the true might of the Valorian Empire." The Valorian fleet moved forward, and the second battle for Earth began. But this battle was different from the first. The humans had learned from their victory. They had studied the wreckage of the Pride of Valoria. They had interrogated the Valorian prisoners and learned about Imperial tactics, shield frequencies, and communication protocols. And they had prepared several surprises. The first surprise came when the Valorian fighters launched. These were small, fast craft piloted by elite warriors. They were designed to overwhelm enemy defenses with numbers and speed. 2,000 fighters streamed toward the human fleet, their plasma cannons ready to tear through unshielded vessels. Then the human drones activated. They had been waiting. Hidden among the debris and asteroids of the inner solar system, thousands of unmanned combat drones, each controlled by advanced artificial intelligence that had been programmed with one purpose: destroy enemy fighters. They were small, fast, and expendable. They didn't need life support, didn't need food or rest, and didn't feel fear. They swarmed the Valorian fighters like angry hornets. The Valorian pilots were skilled, but they had never faced anything like this. The human drones worked in perfect coordination, attacking from multiple angles, sacrificing themselves to take down enemies, overwhelming the fighters through sheer numbers. Within minutes, half the Valorian fighter force was destroyed. The survivors retreated in panic. Commander Bashir watched the battle with growing concern. What kind of species builds machines to fight their battles? Where is the honor in that? His tactical officer had no answer. Honor was a Valorian concept. The humans, it seemed, cared more about winning than about honor. The second surprise came when the Valorian fleet entered firing range. They activated their plasma cannons and particle beams, ready to obliterate the human capital ships. But before they could fire, something strange happened. Their targeting computers malfunctioned. Weapon systems went offline. Communication channels filled with static and garbage data. "What's happening?" Bashir shouted. "We're under cyber attack," his technical officer reported. "The humans are broadcasting viral code on multiple frequencies. It's infiltrating our computer systems. I've never seen anything like it. It's adapting, learning, bypassing our security protocols faster than we can counter it." The humans had weaponized information, while the Valorians relied heavily on advanced artificial intelligence to run their ships. Humans had learned to hack, to corrupt, to subvert. Earth's best computer experts had been working for weeks to crack Valorian software, and they had succeeded. Viruses flooded the Imperial network, shutting down weapons, locking navigation systems, and creating chaos. Not all Valorian ships were affected. Some commanders had manually isolated their systems quickly enough, but nearly a third of the fleet was compromised, helpless and drifting in space. These ships became easy targets for human railguns. The third surprise was perhaps the most disturbing for the Valorians. As the battle raged, human ships began broadcasting on all frequencies. Not threats, not demands, just information. They broadcast humanity's history. The Valorians had studied other species before conquering them, but they had never truly understood humanity. Now as they fought, they learned. They learned about the Roman Empire and its legions that conquered half the known world. They learned about the Mongol hordes that swept across continents. They learned about the world wars, where humans had killed hundreds of millions of their own kind with industrial efficiency. They learned about nuclear weapons that could destroy entire planets. The broadcasts showed battles. Thousands of them, humans fighting humans over and over for thousands of years. Battles fought with swords, with guns, with bombs, with chemical weapons, with nuclear fire. The message was clear. Humanity had been preparing for war since they first learned to stand upright. War was not something new to them. It was their history, their culture, perhaps even their nature. One Valorian officer watched the broadcasts and whispered, These creatures are insane. They nearly destroyed themselves dozens of times, and they're proud of it? But Admiral Okonkwo understood something the Valorians didn't. Humanity wasn't proud of its bloody history. They were ashamed of it. They had worked for centuries to become better, to be peaceful, to explore space with hope and curiosity. But when threatened, when faced with extinction, they remembered their lessons. All those terrible wars had taught humanity one thing: how to survive. The battle continued for hours. The Valorian fleet was larger and more powerful, but the humans were more flexible, more creative, more willing to take risks. Valorian ships followed standard Imperial tactics, moving in predictable formations following regulations written centuries ago. Human ships broke every rule, attacking from unexpected angles, using kamikaze tactics, setting traps. A group of human corvettes, small, fast ships with minimal weapons, flew directly at a Valorian dreadnought. The Valorians assumed they were fleeing or malfunctioning. Then the corvettes activated their reactors to overload and rammed into the dreadnought at maximum speed. The resulting explosions crippled the massive vessel. The human crews died instantly, but they took a ship worth 1,000 times their own with them. Commander Bashir watched in horror as another dreadnought exploded under similar circumstances. They're sacrificing themselves. They're crashing their own ships into ours deliberately. Sir, we're receiving a transmission from the human flagship, his communications officer reported. Put it through, Bashir ordered. Admiral Okonkwo's face appeared on the display. She looked tired but determined. Commander Bashir, I'm giving you one chance. Retreat now. Leave our system. Tell your empire that Earth is not worth the cost. We don't want to kill you, but we will if we must. Bashir felt anger rise in his chest. You're losing, human! We still have superior numbers. We will crush you and— You're not listening, Okonkwo interrupted. We're not trying to win a glorious victory. We're fighting for our survival. Do you understand the difference? Your warriors fight for honor and conquest. My people fight because if we lose everything. Our families, our world, our entire species. There is nothing we won't do. No sacrifice we won't make. No tactic we won't use. You can kill us all, but you'll lose most of your fleet doing it. Is Earth really worth that? Bashir paused. He looked at his tactical display. The humans were right. Yes, the Valorian fleet would probably win eventually, but the cost would be enormous. He had already lost 30 ships. Thousands of warriors were dead, and the humans showed no sign of surrendering. They would fight to the last ship, the last bullet, the last breath. For the first time in his long military career, Commander Bashir made a decision that went against every Imperial regulation. He ordered a retreat. All ships fall back to Rally Point Gamma. We are withdrawing from this system. His officers stared at him in shock. One brave tactical officer protested, Sir, the captured Valorian ships drifted in Earth's orbit, their crews imprisoned or dead, their systems exposed to human engineers. Dr. Yuki Tanaka led the research team that tore apart the alien technology, studying every component, every circuit, every line of code. What they found changed everything. The faster-than-light drive, Dr. Tanaka explained to President Chen and the Military Council. It's actually simpler than we thought. The Valorians didn't invent it. They inherited it from a species they conquered 3 centuries ago. And we can replicate it. General Stone leaned forward. How long? We already have 3 working prototypes installed in our newest ships. We can travel between star systems now. We can take this war to them. Admiral Okonkwo stood before the holographic star map in the war room, studying the Valorian Empire. 47 conquered systems, spreading across 200 light-years. The Empire's core worlds lay deep in their territory, protected by layers of defense and thousands of warships. A direct assault would be suicide. We need intelligence, she said. We need to know which systems are heavily defended and which are vulnerable. We need to know about the species under Valorian rule. Most importantly, we need allies. Captain Rodriguez, now promoted to commander after his bravery in the second battle, pointed to a system near the edge of Valorian space. Epsilon Eridani. According to the data we extracted from the captured ships, it's a mining colony inhabited by a species called the Corvin. They were conquered 40 years ago. Light defenses, mostly automated. If we could take it quickly, we could send a message, Admiral Okonkwo finished. Show the galaxy that the Valorians can be beaten. Show the conquered species that resistance is possible. 3 weeks later, a human fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Epsilon Eridani system. 5 capital ships, 20 frigates, and a cloud of combat drones. It was a small force by Valorian standards, but it was enough. The Valorian garrison consisted of 2 cruisers and a handful of defensive platforms. They detected the human ships immediately and sent an urgent distress signal, but the nearest Valorian reinforcements were days away. The garrison commander, a mid-level officer named Kelros, had never seen combat. He had expected to spend a quiet career overseeing primitive miners on a backwater world. Now he faced human warships. "This is Commander Kelros of the Valorian Imperial Garrison," he broadcast. "You are in violation of Imperial space. Withdraw immediately or face destruction." Admiral Okonkwo's response was brief. No. The human fleet attacked with the same ruthless efficiency they had shown at Earth. Railgun rounds crossed the distance in seconds. The Valorian cruisers raised their shields, but they were older models, weaker than the dreadnoughts. The shields collapsed under sustained fire. Both cruisers were destroyed within minutes. The defensive platforms lasted slightly longer, but without support they fell quickly. The humans had control of the system within an hour. But unlike the Valorians, who would have celebrated conquest, the humans did something unexpected. They sent a message to the planet below. "People of Corvin," Admiral Okonkwo broadcast in their language, translated by the computer systems they had taken from Valorian ships. "We are humans from Earth. We are not here to conquer you. We are here to liberate you. The Valorian Empire attacked our world. They demanded our surrender. We refused. We defeated them. Now we offer you a choice. Join us in fighting for freedom or remain neutral. We will not force you. We will not enslave you. That is what makes us different from the Valorians." On the planet's surface, the Corvin people listened in shock. They were a peaceful species, insect-like beings with multiple legs and compound eyes. They had been farmers and artists before the Valorians came. For 40 years they had mined metals and rare elements to feed the Imperial war machine. They had been slaves in all but name. The Corvin Elder Council debated for 3 days. Some were afraid. The Valorians would return and the punishment for rebellion would be severe. But others remembered freedom. They remembered when their world was their own. Finally, Elder Trachis, the oldest among them, made the decision. "We will help the humans. Not because we are warriors, we are not, but because we are tired of being afraid. If the humans can defeat the Valorians, then perhaps there is hope for all of us." The Corvin provided something more valuable than weapons or ships. They provided information. 4 decades under Valorian rule had taught them about Imperial logistics, supply routes, communication protocols, and military schedules. They knew which systems were important, which colonies were heavily defended, and which species were most unhappy under Valorian rule. Armed with this intelligence, the human fleet struck again. And again. Small fast raids on lightly defended targets, mining colonies, supply depots, communication relays. They didn't try to hold territory. They destroyed military targets, freed prisoners, and moved on before Valorian reinforcements could arrive. Each victory brought more allies. The Hrathi, a feline species conquered 70 years ago, provided pilots for human ships. The Delane, aquatic beings who were excellent engineers, helped improve human technology. The Quinn, a species of small, clever creatures, became scouts and spies, infiltrating Valorian facilities. Within 6 months, the human fleet had grown from 5 capital ships to 40, and not all of them were human-built. Allied species contributed their own vessels, their own warriors, their own resources. What had started as Earth's desperate defense had become a liberation movement. The Valorian High Council watched this development with growing alarm. They had never faced a coordinated rebellion before. Individual species sometimes resisted conquest, but they always fought alone and were quickly crushed. Now multiple conquered species were working together under human leadership. "We must respond with overwhelming force," High Counselor Mevrin declared. "Assemble the Grand Fleet, 10,000 ships. We will sweep through our territory and crush these rebels once and for all." But High Counselor Thessa disagreed. "You don't understand what we're facing. This isn't a normal rebellion. The humans are different. They don't fight for territory or resources. They fight for an idea of freedom, and ideas are harder to kill than ships." "Then we'll kill them all," Mevrin responded coldly. "Every human, every rebel, every species that supported them." We'll make an example so terrible that no one will ever dare challenge the Empire again. The Grand Fleet assembled at the Valorian homeworld. It was the largest military force ever gathered in known history. 10,000 warships from massive dreadnoughts to small fighters, 5 million warriors, enough firepower to sterilize 100 planets. High Counselor Mevrin himself took command, determined to end the human threat personally. Human intelligence networks detected the fleet's movement immediately. Former Valorian officers who had defected, allied species with access to Imperial communications, and sophisticated monitoring systems all confirmed the same thing. The Valorians were coming with everything they had. Admiral Okonkwo called a meeting of all Allied commanders aboard the Retribution. Representatives from 15 different species gathered in the war room, all looking to her for leadership. "We cannot defeat this fleet in open battle," she said honestly. "They outnumber us 10 to 1. Even with our weapons, even with our tactics, we would be overwhelmed." A Hrathi captain named Rakesh bared his fangs in frustration. "Then we have lost? We should surrender?" "No," Admiral Okonkwo replied with a slight smile. "We don't face them in open battle. We do what humans have done for thousands of years when facing superior forces. We use strategy. We use deception. We divide them and defeat them piece by piece." She activated the holographic star map. "The Grand Fleet is massive, but it has a weakness. It's too big. It requires enormous amounts of fuel, supplies, and coordination. We're going to cut their supply lines. We're going to attack their logistics. We're going to force them to divide their forces to protect their infrastructure. And when they divide, we'll pick them off." Commander Rodriguez added, "We've identified critical supply hubs throughout Valorian space: fuel refineries, food production centers, repair facilities. The Grand Fleet needs all of these to function. We're going to destroy them." Over the next 3 months, the human-led coalition launched hundreds of raids. While the Grand Fleet hunted them, searching for a decisive battle, the coalition struck everywhere else. Fuel depots exploded. Food supplies were destroyed. Repair stations were captured or demolished. The Grand Fleet began to suffer. Ships ran out of fuel and had to be abandoned. Crews went on reduced rations. Minor damage couldn't be repaired, accumulating until ships became combat ineffective. High Counselor Mevrin grew increasingly frustrated. "Where are they? Why won't they face us in battle like warriors?" His tactical advisor, a younger officer named Vaith who had studied human history, replied quietly, "Because they're not warriors in the way we understand it, Counselor. Humans are survivors. They fight to win, not to prove their courage. They'll use any tactic, any strategy that works. Honor means nothing if you're dead." Finally, the coalition made their move. They appeared at a moderately defended system called Talara, deep in Valorian territory. It was a shipyard system, producing vessels for the Imperial fleet. It was also strategically located. If the Valorians lost it, their supply lines would collapse. High Counselor Mevrin saw his Chi, the Valorian High Council, assembled in their ancient chamber, a building that had stood for 800 years at the heart of Valoria Prime. Through the crystal dome above, they could see human warships hovering in orbit, silent and threatening. The chamber that had witnessed the conquest of 200 species now held a debate about surrender. High Counselor Mevrin stood before his fellow council members, his forearms trembling with rage. "This is impossible. This is disgraceful. We cannot surrender to primitives, to a species that barely learned to leave their own planet." But High Counselor Thessa, who had always been more cautious, looked at the tactical displays with cold calculation. "The humans have proven they are not primitives. They defeated our fleets. They turned our conquered species against us. They outsmarted our best commanders, and now they hold our homeworld hostage. Perhaps it's time we admit the truth. We underestimated them from the beginning." A younger counselor named Varys spoke up. He had recently returned from the front lines and had seen the human tactics firsthand. "I have studied their history. Do you know what we would have found if we had bothered to look before invading Earth? A species that fought thousands of wars against themselves. They nearly destroyed their own planet multiple times with weapons of mass destruction. They spent 10,000 years perfecting the art of killing, and we thought we could intimidate them with a single ship? What do you suggest?" another counselor asked. "That we simply accept their demands?" Varys gestured to the ships above. "I suggest we accept reality. We have two choices. First, we can refuse their offer and watch as they destroy our cities, kill our people, and dismantle our empire by force. Second, we can negotiate, surrender with dignity, save our people, perhaps even maintain some of our autonomy. The humans say they don't want to conquer us. Unlike us, they might actually mean it. High Counselor Mevrin slammed his fist on the council table. Never. I will not be the counselor who surrendered the Empire. I'll activate the Omega Protocol. We'll use the World Killer weapon. If we cannot win, we'll take them with us. The room fell silent. The Omega Protocol was ancient, a weapon from the early days of the Empire. It was a massive bomb buried deep in the crust of Valoria Prime, powerful enough to crack a planet apart. It was meant as a final deterrent, ensuring that if the homeworld ever fell, the enemy would gain nothing but a dead rock. You would destroy our own world? Thessa asked quietly. Kill billions of our own people just to spite the humans? Better dead than enslaved, Mevrin replied coldly. But before he could give the order, something unexpected happened. Junior officers of the Valorian military, who had been listening to the council debate, made a decision. They had fought against humans. They had seen their friends die. They had watched as the Empire's lies about invincibility crumbled. And they were tired. Commander Vythe, the tactical advisor who had studied human history, led a group of young officers into the council chamber. They were armed, but they didn't raise their weapons. They simply stood before the council. Counselors, Faith said respectfully but firmly, we will not allow you to destroy our world. The humans gave us a chance for peace. Many species would not. After what we did to them, after threatening Earth with destruction, they could have simply wiped us out. But they didn't. That shows they meant what they said. They're not conquerors. We were the conquerors. Perhaps it's time we stopped. High Counselor Mevrin reached for his personal weapon, but Thessa held up a hand, stopping him. No, Faith is right. I've been on this council for 80 years. I've seen us conquer dozens of worlds. And now I see that we were wrong. All those species we claimed to bring order to, we were just stealing their freedom. The humans showed us that. They fought not for conquest, but for survival. And when they won, they offered mercy. When have we ever done that? She turned to face the rest of the council. I vote to accept the human terms. End the war. Release the conquered species. Begin negotiations. One by one, other counselors nodded. Even those who were reluctant recognized the reality. The alternative was total destruction. Finally, only High Counselor Mevrin stood opposed. He looked around the chamber, saw that he was alone, and slowly lowered his head in defeat. Then the Empire ends, he said quietly. 800 years of Valorian rule, finished by a species we could have left alone. Admiral Okonkwo received the acceptance message aboard the Retribution. She felt relief wash over her, mixed with exhaustion. The war had lasted almost a year. Thousands of humans had died. Tens of thousands of allied species fighters had perished. Millions of Valorians were dead. It had been brutal, costly, and terrifying. But it was over. The peace negotiations took place aboard a neutral station in orbit around Valoria Prime. Admiral Okonkwo led the human delegation. Elder Trachis represented the Corvin. Rakesh spoke for the Hrathi. Representatives from 13 other liberated species attended. On the Valorian side, High Counselor Thessa led the negotiations, having been elected as the new senior counselor after Mevrin resigned in disgrace. The terms were clear. The Valorian Empire would be dissolved. All conquered species would be granted independence. The Valorian military would be reduced to a defense-only force, limited to protecting their homeworld and their few colonies. War reparations would be paid to the species that had suffered under imperial rule, and most importantly, a new organization would be formed, the Sol Accords, named after Earth's solar system. The Sol Accords were based on a simple principle: mutual defense. Any species that joined would pledge to defend any other member species from conquest or enslavement. It was the opposite of the Empire. Instead of one species dominating all others, all species would stand together as equals. This is a new beginning, Admiral Okonkwo said during the signing ceremony. Not just for the species that were conquered, but for all of us. The Valorians were not evil. They believed they were bringing order to the galaxy. They believed their way was best. But they forgot one crucial thing. Every species has the right to choose their own path. The Sol Accords will ensure that right is protected. High Counselor Thessa signed the agreement on behalf of Valoria. Her hands trembled as she placed her signature on the document that officially ended her people's empire. I hope, she said quietly. That future generations will understand this was necessary. That ending the empire, as painful as it is, was the right choice. Perhaps we can learn to be something other than conquerors. Perhaps we can learn to be equals. The news spread across the galaxy at the speed of light. Species that had been enslaved for generations celebrated their freedom. Neutral civilizations that had feared the empire's expansion breathed easier. And far away on Earth, humanity marked the moment with quiet reflection rather than triumphant celebration. President Chen addressed the people of Earth from the same room where she had received the Valorian ultimatum almost a year ago. Today we have peace. But let us not forget the cost. 3,000 human warriors died defending our world and liberating others. They will be remembered as heroes. But let us also remember what we learned. We prepared for war because we had to. We fought because we had no choice. But we should never become like those who threatened us. We should never use our strength to dominate others. That is not who we are. 5 years later, Admiral Okonkwo retired from military service and became the first Secretary General of the Sol Accords. The organization had grown to include 47 species, including the Valorians themselves. Her office was on a space station that orbited between Earth and Mars, neutral ground where all species could meet as equals. She kept a memento on her desk, a piece of metal from the Pride of Valoria, the first Valorian ship destroyed in the war. It reminded her of how close humanity had come to destruction, how easily Earth could have been conquered if the Valorians had sent a larger fleet initially, or if humans hadn't prepared in advance. Commander Rodriguez, now an admiral himself, visited her office one day. They looked out at the stars together, watching ships from dozens of species pass by peacefully. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if we had surrendered?" Rodriguez asked. "If we had just accepted the Valorian ultimatum?" Okonkwo was quiet for a moment. "Sometimes. We would have survived, probably. The Valorians weren't genocidal. They would have integrated us into their empire like all the others. But we would have lost something more important than our lives. We would have lost our freedom, our right to choose our own destiny, and eventually we might have forgotten we ever had that choice. And now we're guardians, not conquerors but protectors. We make sure no species has to face what we faced. That's a responsibility I can live with." On Valoria Prime, a memorial was built in the center of the capital city. It listed the names of all the Valorian warriors who had died in the war with Earth. At the base of the memorial, an inscription was carved in both Valorian and English. "Here are remembered those who fell when the Empire met Earth. May their sacrifice remind us that strength without wisdom is foolishness, and conquest without consent is tyranny. May we learn to seek peace before war, and cooperation before domination." The Empire menaced Earth, expecting